So I want to talk about a poll that came out about a week ago now. It was done by CBS and YouGov. And at that time, there were about 175,000 deaths in the US from COVID. And it asked people whether they thought that that was an acceptable number. And the results were 10% of Democrats said yes, 31% of independents said yes, and 57% of Republicans said that 175,000 deaths from COVID in the US was an acceptable number. Putting first impressions aside, I want to take a moment to talk about what might be influencing that feeling or informing that feeling. So, one of the things that I have said when I talk about COVID is that and I am someone who checks our national numbers every day. And each week I look at the graph of my state's numbers and our national numbers. And I also, though, look at other countries' numbers. It is not like this in most other countries, which says to me that it does not need to be like this here. It did not have to be this bad. It did not have to stay this bad this long. Because while other countries went through spikes, they were generally not as high as it was here, and this is accounting for population difference. And secondly, their numbers did go down significantly. Ours never really went down. We dipped and then spiked right back up. Other countries' numbers, most other countries, went down, significantly down. That did not happen here. But if you did not know that, if you were not aware of that, I could understand how you might think that how it is playing out here is like the only option of how it could have played out. Like that this is just what a pandemic means and looks like. That this is how bad it gets. And if you think that, then psychologically your brain wants to accept what it sees in front of it. To deal with the reality that you have. So seeing then these deaths as acceptable becomes a reflection of not knowing, possibly, that there wasn't an option of it being better. So it is what it is. You have to accept what it is. That could be what is influencing that very high number among certain people in the US. Now, I mean, how do we change that? Well, you could look outside of your own experience and your own country's experience and just be curious to have just the intellectual curiosity or just the plain curiosity of wow, this being a pandemic by definition means it's affecting the whole world. How are other countries dealing with this? Taking a look at it. But also, it is not the average person's responsibility to track, daily cases in other countries. There are other things on the average person's mind. Meaning then that responsibility is on the media and politicians to put the information in context. Context is the most vital part of giving information for me, because you can't just tell someone what is happening. You have to tell them, you have to explain what that means and why it's happening, because otherwise you're lacking vital information. So there's blame to go around here. I think we also need to take a look at how certain people are identifying who matters and how what impacts other people is or is not impacting them personally. I think that's a part of it too, and I think that that is not something that we can look over. I think that our deaths are now above 180,000. And I understand, because I feel it, that it's just like, it's another 1,000, it's another 1,000, it's another 800, it's another 1,200 every single day. What are you supposed to do with that? How do you function normally when that is the reality? Part of you has to step back from that number. For a lot of people, that's not possible, because one of those 800 or 1,200 is someone that they know, it's someone that they love. There's no stepping back from this. But as the numbers just get bigger, you have such a wider range of people who know someone who has either been diagnosed or is in the hospital or has passed away. And I don't think it's acceptable to just wait for it to happen to someone you know in order to start caring. That's not okay. That's not acceptable. And so while I agree with the fact that Republicans don't want that many people to have died, that's not a plus for them. That's not something that, it's not that in general they view that number of deaths as acceptable. I think we do have to look at why that group is so high, that 57%, quite over half, said, yeah, I'm okay that it is this bad. I think some self-reflection is in order. And for everyone, but specifically, if you are someone who has struggled to see why people are so adamant about wearing masks, why people are so adamant about social distancing, about not going out to bars and restaurants, about not going out to large gatherings, if you don't understand why people are taking that seriously, take a step back. Just think about yourself, think about in community. The ways that you exist in a community, whether that is your household, whether that is your neighborhood, whether that is your congressional district, however you want to think of it, you exist in a community. And that community is struggling significantly right now in so many ways. In so many ways that it doesn't have to be this bad. There's nothing inevitable about how bad that this is. There is nothing it was avoidable to reach this point. It's not okay that it's this bad. It's not acceptable.